Hey everyone, this is ScrapComputer here. This video is going to cover the mid lane role and all the complaints that are thrown around at that role, both the people that play it and the people who dislike mid laners for a multitude of reasons. I'm going to explain and hopefully try and reason what the mid lane role has to do, and more importantly what it doesn't have to do. Every player in the game has complained at the mid laner at some point, or been complained at when you are the mid laner for not doing something. I wish to cover this so the next time you complain to, you have an argument with logic hopefully in hand. Ganking. I wanted to start in this one. Mid laners have absolutely no obligation in the slightest to roam to another lane. Mid lane role isn't about ganking. It depends upon the game, it depends who you're versus, depends who you're playing. It depends how good the other lanes are, it depends how good you are to gank. It just depends on the player themselves. Some people don't gank, some people do it a lot. For mid laners, they can spend 25 minutes just farming in mid lane. For a solo role, that's not only perfectly acceptable and cool, but encouraged. Although mid lane is the second best role to gank and roam, it's a risk reward. Many players make this calculation and don't think it's worth it. Running to another lane that could just walk away when you walk down the entire river, it just costs you time. It can cost you the lane if you do it a few times. Additionally, mid lane is also not only just that, it's also the second most heavily warded lane in general, and ganking bot lane, which is the most warded lane, is difficult. And if you don't tell the mid laner where the wards are, what do you want them to do? If you want to gank, get yourself some pinks or a lens, minimize the risk so the mid laner can gank in a more assured fashion. And for the mid laners, don't feel obliged to keep the numbers even. Don't try to count ganks is what I'm saying here. If your enemy laner tried to go down bot lane like 4 or 5 times, you don't have to go down 4 or 5 times. You don't even have to go down once. It really depends on the game, depends what you have to do. Make your own decisions, don't run off counters. In summary, mid lanes do not have to gank if they do not feel like it. Following the enemy laner, this comes on from the previous point, mid laners do not have to follow the enemy mid if they roam. Don't get me wrong, following grants us with a powerful opportunity to turn a fight, collapse on someone, but it's not always needed and sometimes it's risky. Sometimes mids have low mana, sometimes they're down their ultimate, sometimes the player will calculate they just can't win the fight, and that player is allowed to make that decision. It's their role, it's their game, they can do what they like, they don't have to follow. Following can sometimes get you killed as a mid laner if you get counter collapsed upon, which no one wants. If they decide it's too risky and a minimalistic reward, they don't have to do it. Don't get me wrong, it's a good thing. If you can follow, you can get a lot of clean kills, it can turn the game on its head, but again, it can go the other way as well. And if the mid laner decides that is possibly going to happen, they can back off, they don't have to follow. They can push out the lane and cost the enemy laner who roam towards you a little bit of golden experience. And if you're smart, you'll back off, and that means the mid laner, the enemy mid laner, lost a bit because your mid laner didn't roam. And in the end of the world, in the end of the game, that's what's going to happen. Win your lane. I'm just wanting to emphasize this a little bit more for the 2 previous points. It's not up to pop a mid lane to feed you all day. It's not up for the mid lane to gank and roam and apply pressure everywhere. It's just don't rely on anyone to win your lane for you except yourself. That's all you can do. Don't rely on the jungler, don't rely on the mid. Play your best, try and get yourself some kills, and that's how you play this game. Do not wait for another role or another player to carry you. Blue buff. The blue buff is not the property of the mid laner, shock and awe to many. Yes, the mid laner in 90% of cases onwards is probably the best benefactor of a blue buff, but it doesn't mean they own it. If the jungler wants all the blues, you don't actually have the right to complain. It does lower your chance to win the game. Most junglers know that, that's why they give you the blue. But it is up to the jungler to assign the blue. It's his or her jungle, you don't lay any claim to it at all, and that's just an unfortunate fact, it's an unfortunate truth. And a lot of players I find just completely want all the blues from after the first one's been taken. Sometimes your jungler's behind, sometimes they're really far ahead, and they could be they could get more benefit out of it essentially. So don't try and expect and ping your jungler, and as a jungler, don't feel obliged to give the blue buff over either. If you feel you can do better with it or give it to someone else who'd be more useful, don't feel bad, just do it. Taking CS, clearing / pushing. Mid lane in the vast majority of cases once again is the wave clear role of the game. As such, they generally push mini waves after a gank. They'll take a crap ton of CS doing this, although clear mid lane when everyone's clumped, they're going to get all the CS as well, and when side lanes are pushed, they usually get all the CS. It's not that the mid lane role is greedy, it is that they are generally orientated towards that task. It's because they're the most effective at it. This sometimes annoys players, but at the end of the day, clearing is a normal part of a mid laner's job, I personally rotate around the map multiple times throughout the game, clearing multiple waves, and yeah, at the end I have a shit ton of CS, and that's just the way it goes, and you can't really complain about that. If you're a player, don't get annoyed at mid laners. It's their job. It means you're not stuck in the side lane 10 minutes trying to clear his Olaf. It means the mid laner can clear it in about 8 seconds. Olaf might take about 15, and that's just not quick enough at the end of the day. And as a mid laner, don't feel guilty. It's your job. It's just something that has to be done. Mid lane falls behind. Last but not least, now a massive one. Mid lane is the biggest snowball lane in the game easily. Now this of course can vary. Some lanes are a little bit more snowbally, but in general mid lane is an extremely snowbally lane. Please do not get upset at mids when this happens. Mid lane is a heavy lane when behind. A Fed and Nivea versus a very far behind Victor, for example, the Victor's going to get slapped. Even with 1 or 2 kills in this matchup, the Victor's ability to do next to anything is diminished. Victor in this matchup will either lose tons of CS, die a lot, or in a more common space, both. Mid lane is a role that falls behind extremely heavily. Don't get upset over it. It's not an immediate excuse for any wrongdoing. I'm just saying it is a consideration. It's not an excuse. But I try to give most mids a good bit of leeway. It does depend on the lane of their versus, if they're kill based or not. But for the most part, any mid laner who's played mid lane and versus somebody got really fed or got lucky early kills with a jungle gank knows the feeling of this. And don't put the mid laners under pressure. There's nothing you can do. As a mid laner, don't feel bad. This happens some games, and just move on. Those are my main points. Hopefully elaborates a couple of points that mid laners do get a lot of crap for. I know mid lane is a role that does take a lot of dissing, a lot of knocks and rolls, and it's just not really fair in most cases. Mid lane is quite an adapter role. It's got a lot of very important jobs and a lot of very important defined factors, and the problem is people assume that one player has to roam, they assume one player has to follow this guy, they assume these things have to happen, they assume they get the blue, they're complained to because they get all the CS in a lane, they complain to because they fall behind, and these are all things that are just natural occurrences of the role. I want to give logic to both sides of the argument. Hopefully I've challenged that at least a little bit, and hopefully it gives you a little bit more light in the mid lane role if you don't play it that much, and if you are a mid laner, hopefully it also gives you a little bit of acknowledgement to other roles and other players making decisions. It's not all about you. And that's it, guys. If you like the video, like it, dislike it, dislike it. If you like the content, you can subscribe. If you think it's horrible, it totally dropped the ball, you can unsub and totally fair. I've been like, guys, have a great day, best luck on the Rift, and hopefully I'll see you guys later. Thank you very much for watching.